And at this point, I'm going to introduce our special guest, who is coming all the way from down under, and hopefully you can see him and hear him good. It's Brother Richard Lobwein. He is a very dear brother, a wonderful man. Him and his wife are both there, actually. I don't know if we'll get to see her or not, but that's the background is Australia. And he is a telecommunications engineer, not engineer, but a telecommunications expert, installs and troubleshoots telecommunications issues of all kinds, including satellite dishes and so on. So welcome, Brother Richard. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Sir Timothy. It's good to be here. Hello to everyone else.
Yeah, well, welcome. It's good to have you. And it's good to see a little bit of Australia.
Yes, I'm in a little town out in the outback of Queensland. That's on the eastern side of Australia. In the background is just the bush on the outskirts of Tedler's little town, because I'm actually at work at the moment, and I've just driven into the bush where it's a bit quieter so that I can concentrate a bit better.
Yeah, let me explain to the people. Richard travels quite a bit to install these satellite dishes and troubleshoot them and get everything working properly, the various equipment. So he's actually on the road, and he's actually pulled over to a place where he can Skype with us and be our guest on this conference. So go ahead, Richard. Tell us a little bit about your background, if you don't mind.
Yes, happy to, Sir Timothy. Well, I might just focus a little bit on my sort of relationship with wits, because I think that's pretty important. I mean, my general background. I mean, I was a school teacher for a long time. I taught mathematics and music for a long time, and but just needed a change and swapped over into the telecommunications industry. But and I guess my basic nature of being a gadget person led me to query some of the YouTube videos I saw of wits, and I was most intrigued. And when I first made contact with wits, I think I had a little bit of a disagreement with Brother John Phil there about a couple of things, but it wasn't like I stuck with it, because Sir Timothy, I must admit, I just thought that you were very credible in what you were saying, and so I looked at all the videos and took in what I could from there. And I just, having spoken with you a few times by Skype and having had some very interesting conversations, I just had to go over there and see what you're up to, because I just became convinced that what you were doing was much more in-depth, much more insightful than what I'd come across elsewhere in the area of free energy. So for those people who are listening, I just want to say that I have actually, spent some time over in Ohio there with Sir Timothy, and am a witness to all of the things, not all, but many of the devices, free energy devices and things that WITS has developed, and it was extraordinary. I just was the most fascinating, interesting, and just really life-changing experience, seeing that these things are actually possible, and just getting a bit of a grasp of what the implications are for the human race. It was great, and just hoping to be able to be useful in progressing what WITS is doing. So that's
thank you, brother. Yeah, that's fantastic. We really appreciated you coming out and getting involving yourself and helping, and it's been a blessing to have you on the team. You're a great asset to the team, and so we appreciate that. So you were a mathematics teacher, and did you teach science as well, or just mathematics?
Yes, I did teach mathematics and science, and music was my other area, although, here in Australia, school teachers are supposed to be multi-skilled. So I did actually, when I was a school teacher, my main extracurricular activity had to do with what we call outdoor education. That means we take people into the bush, like you can see behind me here, and we teach them bushcraft skills, how to survive, how to navigate, how to live comfortably in the wilderness. And
That's excellent. That's excellent to know that group of skills, because I would say here in the United States, most people, if they had to survive in the wild, I would say 99% of them, or at least 95% of them, would probably be dead in about 3 months or less.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's largely true in Australia as well, because most people have migrated to the cities and sort of living in that environment where they're a bit out of touch. One of the things that sticks in my mind when I was a school teacher was having a child arrived when we were actually running a camping expedition in the bush, And this child had come from the city, and the parents had just delivered them out to the campsite. And the child got out of the car and stood there frozen and said, "But there's dirt everywhere."
There's dirt everywhere.
Unfortunately, that's a little bit common, and it's very disappointing to see that there's not a lot of ruggedness in the younger generation, and it's a shame. I think we need to do something about that, because it's very important to have a little bit of self-confidence, when it comes to having to deal with unusual circumstances, and that's
sure.
Yeah.
I have a similar story in Alaska. It's very remote. There's only 200,000 people that live in the whole state. Well, but it goes between 200 and 400,000, but most of those live right in Anchorage. And we have Mount McKinley, which is the tallest mountain. Now it's called Denali, which is the tallest mountain in North America. And it was quite common to have people to come to visit, and they would say, where do you get, the question they would ask the most is, where do you catch the ski lift to go to the top of Mount McKinley? Of course, that place is so wildernessy, and it's remote, and the people that climb to the top of that mountain, a lot of them die, and they just barely make it. It's a tough climb. But that would be a very common question, that people they don't realize what's going on here.
No, it's a shame. It really detaches people from the fact that everything to live on comes off the land. Like people who've never had any experience of being out in the wilderness, they think that all food comes from the local store.
Right.
That's as far as it goes. It's very limiting. But thank you for your address, by the way. My wife Anne is here, and she had a Bible open and was listening to all of that.
Yeah, let's get her on the picture here. Let's say hi. Hi, Anne. It's good to see you.
Hi.
Welcome.
Timothy. Hi, everybody.
Welcome to the show. I don't know how many people we have. Let's ask anybody that can tell us. Maybe Greg can send me a chat. I did get some of his chats, so he can tell us how many people are on that are watching the program live. And then this will be recorded, and it'll be up for about a week. It's good to see you, Anne. Are you enjoying your day up there?
Oh, yes, thank you. Thank you. I love it when we can stop and talk to you. I like listening to your preaching and teaching, Sir Timothy. I get a lot out of it, and it encourages me and builds my faith.
Well, thank you, sister. I really appreciate that, and you guys are a big encouragement for all of us too. We really appreciate that. And welcome on the show. Anything you want to say, feel free. As Richard is there, feel free. As Richard is talking, you feel free to interrupt anytime.
Okay, thank you.
She knows how to do that, Sir Timothy.
Okay.
Yeah, it was good to see you focusing a little bit on the giants there and how that relates to faith. I thought that was a great message. It's when I've thought about that, I've often wondered, how did they do it? I'm sure God gave them strategies how to defeat the giants, but I'm just trying to see how did they go up and slash the arteries in their ankles or something? I don't really know how they defeated the giants, but they obviously did. And to have that kind of faith, I mean, if you asked anyone today to go and face up to like a 12-foot armed giant, that's not something that many people could cope with.
Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. That's it's amazing that they did. We have the detailed story of David and Goliath. Goliath was, I guess, about 8 or 9 or 10 feet tall. He's a pretty good sized guy. Some people even say 11. It depends on they measured the cubit at different times, different standards. Yeah. But So go ahead. I'm going to listen. You go ahead and make your presentation. Yeah. I won't bother you too much.
Certainly. Well, I thought I was quite happy to be asked to speak on this because it's one of those subjects. It's a bit like pre-energy. It's one of those subjects that the mainstream doesn't deal well with, and it's something about which not many mainstream churches speak about or dwell on to any extent. But I found myself, it's only my personal opinion, of course, but I found myself that understanding a bit more about the giants really has a lot of implications for what's happening in the world today and what's likely to happen as end times draw nearer. So if I can just go through a little bit about what the Bible says about it to start with would be good. I mean, if people have got their Bibles handy and they're happy to turn the pages, the first mention of the giants is in Genesis, and it's in, if you look at Genesis chapter 6, just the first few verses there, you'll see it says that when men began to increase in number on the earth and daughters were born to them, the sons of God saw that the daughters of men were beautiful, and they married any of them they chose. If you go down to verse 4, it says, the Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God went to the daughters of men and had children by them. They were the heroes of old, men of renown. And, that word, the sons of God, some people, theological circles believe, they're really talking about men. But I don't think there's any credibility to that, because in the Old Testament, that phrase, sons of God, the original called it says, B'nai Elohim. It's a phrase that is never used in the Old Testament to refer to men. It's only ever used to refer to beings created directly by God. If you look into Job, for instance, you'll see when we have the heavenly conference, or where I think I'll just find that Job 1 verse 6. It says, now there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan also came among them. So that's obviously some kind of heavenly council, and that same term is used there, B'nai Elohim, the sons of God. Now, so it's very unlikely that they were men. The other thing is that in Genesis, back those first few verses in Genesis say that those offspring of those unions were not really human, that they were giants. If I just go back to that first bit in Genesis, it says the Nephilim. The Nephilim, look, there's a few variations on what meaning people give to that, but basically it means the giants or the fallen ones. And it says that they were the heroes of old, men of renown. And from what I can gather, they were mainly renowned for bad stuff. I don't think they were renowned for being particularly godly. But the thing is that because they were giants, it says they were huge guys, and that they were men of renown. There's a lot of evidence now to suggest that the mythology that we get from ancient Greece, for example, the stories of people like Thor and Hercules and Achilles and all of those, it seems likely, I'm not insisting on this or trying to, read into it what's not there, but it's just that the existence of the giants, both in the Bible and the archaeological record, which we shall see shortly, is very suggestive that some of those guys, like Hercules and so on, Achilles, that they weren't just fables that someone with a fertile imagination thought up. It's much more likely, I think, in light of the evidence, that they were actually the Nephilim, the giants, the sons of the union between celestial beings, the fallen angels, and human women. And I think that that's something that obviously needs more exploration, but I'd certainly put that up for people to consider, given what we'll see shortly when we look into the archaeological record. Now, am I going too fast here?
No, you're doing great, brother. We appreciate it. Yeah, you're doing fantastic.
Okay.
Fascinating.
All right.
Fascinating.
Yeah. Okay. Now, if we look back to Genesis 6, verse 4, here's a telling thing. There's a little phrase in there which is very telling. It says, "The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterwards." And in context, if you look down to the next few verses, verses 6 and 7 and 8, it says there, "The Lord was grieved that he had made men on the earth, and his heart was filled with pain. So the Lord said, I will wipe mankind whom I have created from the face of the earth, men and animals, and creatures that move along the ground, and birds of the air. For I am grieved that I have made them." But Noah found favour in the eyes of the Lord. And the reason that, one of the reasons that Noah found favour in the eyes of the Lord, he's said in Scripture that he's a preacher of righteousness, but also that he is perfect in his generations, suggesting very strongly that his genetic inheritance from Adam was still pure, and that basically the entire planet had been corrupted by the influence of the fallen angels interbreeding with the daughters of men. To me, it's very strongly suggestive of that Noah and his family are probably the only family left on the planet whose genetics had not been corrupted. I've looked at a few academic works on this. For instance, I've got an NIV study Bible, and in there, when it talks about the Nephilim, it talks very strongly about the fact that this was a deliberate strategy of Satan to corrupt the bloodline from Adam so that a holy Saviour could never be born. And the fact that it says in verse 4 there that not only were there giants, in the earth before the flood, but in verse 4, and also afterwards. So once again, there's the very strong suggestion again that Satan doesn't give up easily, that he had tried to corrupt the genetics of the entire human race, and even though all of the Nephilim were destroyed at the time of the flood, that he managed somehow to reintroduce that problem into society afterwards. And of course, you spoke about the giants that were in the Promised Land, which where the spies went and reported on them. So it seems very likely that this idea of interbreeding with the human race and trying to corrupt the entire gene pool of the planet was a very, very deliberate, important, and major satanic strategy. And I realise that some people might find that controversial, but I just suggest that the evidence is very strong that that's the case. And if anyone wants to make any comments on that, I'm happy to respond to that. I'm having trouble because I can't see the both screens.
I'll just interrupt for a second. I'll let the audience know if you'd like to send in any questions. Go ahead and start. I do have one question or two questions here that we will get to in a few minutes. So feel free to send in the questions. Richard, what do you think? I'll ask you a question here. Do you think it's possible that the sons of God may have been aliens from other planet, or what do you think of that possibility?
Well, Scripture doesn't say that they're... I mean, that is very popular in the alternate media. I'll refer people to some publications soon where that is the theme. Now, the thing is that there's a lot we don't know, of course, about the universe. That verse I spoke to about in Job, where we have the heavenly assembly, where it says, the sons of God were present and Satan also came among them. It seems from that Satan, unfortunately, was representing the earth at that conference. Now, the other the other entities who were there, they're described as sons of God, the B'nai Elohim, which in the context of the Old Testament is referring to beings created directly by God. So otherwise they may, I don't know for sure, but they may have been people like Adam. Maybe if God created other worlds, I'm not saying he did or he didn't, but if he did, then maybe they were other people in Adam's position who represented their worlds, or they were heavenly beings who were responsible for other worlds. I'm not an expert enough to say either way, but there definitely was a heavenly conference, and there definitely were very important entities there, and Satan was one of them.
Yeah,
representing.
Fascinating. Yeah, that's definitely fascinating. Go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead.
No, that's okay. So whether it's aliens or not, I don't know that that's critical. My personal view is that that Satan has a great interest in not only corrupting the gene pool on the human race, but in fact seeding the planet himself with people of his own persuasion. One question I was going to put up for discussion a bit later, but I'll mention it now, is I was just astounded to read that in your country, in the United States alone, there's something like 4 or 5 million people who claim to have been, for instance, abducted by extraterrestrials and experimented on in the reproductive sense. Now the thing is that if you look into Scripture, you'll find that right back at the time of Nimrod at the Tower of Babel, we find the same type of thing going on there. In fact, you'll find if you get a copy of the Book of Enoch, it doesn't have the status of Scripture, but it's a historical writing which still contains valuable information. It expands on what Nimrod was doing back at the Tower of Babel. He was trying to interbreed human beings with animals and cross different species of animals. And Nimrod, he was a bad dude. He was so, what would you say, so at enmity with God. In the Book of Enoch, you'll see it talks about his actual intention in building the Tower of Babel was to go up there with all his armies and spear God, kill him. This was the attitude, So the purpose of interbreeding men and animals, the purpose of trying to crossbreed different species, what they were trying to create, I do not know. Perhaps the extraterrestrials people talk about today are the offspring of all of that. Who knows? It's an interesting question to consider. But nevertheless, that general concept of the interest that the satanic has in reproduction. I mean, if you're looking at Scripture, it looks like angels in their natural form they don't marry. It says it doesn't say they can't reproduce. It says they don't marry. But we know they can appear in the guise of men. So somehow they probably can take on, sexual capacity. I don't really know, but it seems that Satan himself has a great interest in reproduction, perhaps because he's outnumbered. I don't know.
Are you going to? Yeah, that sounds fascinating, brother. Are you going to show us some pictures, or is?
I will shortly. Yeah, I will shortly. I will do that. I just wanted to mention a couple of other things. If we sort of go on a little bit about, just a little bit about Scripture and what it says there, because there's quite a few references in Scripture that you've mentioned also already about the Anakim, and also the Raphaites is another sub-race of the Nephilim. I'll just read about one if people want to go to Deuteronomy 3 verse 11. It talks specifically about a particular Nephilim or giant, and not Goliath in this case, but it talks about Og, the king of Bashan. It says, that's Deuteronomy 3 verse 11, it says, "For only Og, king of Bashan, remained of the remnant of the giants. Indeed, his bedstead was an iron bedstead." It goes on to say, 9 cubits is its length and 4 cubits its width, according to the standard cubit. Now, that's about 13 feet. So, he was a big boy.
Yep.
And that gives us some precise measurement of the size of some of these giants that we're talking about. And, as we'll see shortly, when we look at some of the evidence from the archaeological record, then it's quite amazing. If I can, I'll have to push a few buttons here, but if I can, I'll submit some links that people can go to get a whole lot of information themselves. Okay. I'll just put up one link now. Just tell me if you get it or you don't. I'll just put it in the text box there and send it. Okay, now I've sent it. Did that one come up?
Well, I'm not watching Justin TV, so I can't answer that. Let's see if Brother Martin can answer that for us.
Yeah, it did come up.
Okay, good. So they got the link.
Got the link. Okay, I'll put another one up there. Now, there's a couple of links there that'll just give you a bit of an idea about the actual amount of evidence that there is in the archaeological record concerning the giants. Now, Sir Timothy, this is something you might be able to help me with, because when I was looking into this a little bit recently, when some of this stuff was put into the mainstream sort of chat groups, people were saying, it can't be true because otherwise the mainstream media would have reported on it. Now, I think you and I know that's the last thing they're going to do. Would that be fair comment?
I'd love to comment on that. The mainstream media loves to keep people in the dark and brainwashed on many different subjects. And the real history of the world is one of those subjects. And when I say history, when there were advanced kingdoms before what we have now, this one world order that we're moving toward now, this last 100, 200 years, in basically 100 years, everything came that we have now, and we have some very high tech. Look at us right now. We're in, probably the listeners and us are probably in 20 different parts of the world and scattered all over, and yet we're able to have a conversation with video and audio. And so, this high-tech stuff, people think this is the first time it ever happened. But I know for a fact, I've found diodes and transistors and complex electronics that the archaeologist that showed those to me, he showed me the dig, and I was able to dig them out of the stone myself just to prove they were real. He said that he thought that those were an ancient garbage dump, and this was in Utah, by the way. There's 2 of them that he had archaeological rights or archaeological digs on, and these were he estimated 200,000 years old. Of course, we know that Adam was created about 6,000 years ago, so that means there was somebody here. If his estimate was correct, now I don't know. At the time, I thought, well, maybe that was from before the flood, and it's only 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 years old. But it does show that somebody was here before us, whether it's 200,000 years or whether it was just 4,000 or 5,000 years. It does show that somebody had advanced technology before us, and that's always swept under the rug. They don't really want people knowing that. Yet you look at the evidence, the pyramids, obviously whoever built those had some pretty advanced technology because they can't duplicate it to this day. And there's a number of different stone monuments that are still in South America on the highest mountains there. There's some precision cut stones that are as harder than granite. They're almost as hard as diamond, second hardest stone in the world. And these are huge, and they're precision cut and fit together in a way that you had to have. They had to have some sort of anti-gravity and some sort of very advanced way to cut those stones in order to do all that. So my opinion is that the giants, the reason they cover up these photographs that you're showing everybody is because they don't want people to know. It's forbidden archaeology, and there have been a number of books written that are that are called that are on that subject, and some even named forbidden archaeology. And I recommend that people read them if you want to know the whole truth.
Thank you very much, Timothy. Because some of this stuff, if people haven't been exposed to it, of course, can be a little bit shattering to the sort of what they commonly believe about the history of the planet. What I'll do is I'll submit a title of a reference. You can easily download this. I don't think it's free, but you can download it, and it's not a Christian work at all. In fact, it's anti-Christian, if anything, but it does detail exactly what you're talking about in the most incredible length. All of the archaeological anomalies that currently on the record stuff that shows exactly what you're talking about. The fact that there has been high technology in the past. In fact, there's one incident there which I was most fascinated with, because I think you understand scalar interferometry. Is that right? You know how that produced that sort of hemispherical energy shield?
Yep.
I'm just reading in that book about how there's one place, I think it's over in the Middle East somewhere, where there's a huge circle of glass, as if one of those hemispherical defensive shields have been deployed on the ground, because it's a perfect circle of fused quartz. Huge.
Yeah.
And it's the type of thing you only get with incredible temperatures and incredible energies to fuse the sand into that type of greenish glass. So it's interesting. I'll just put that link up, that title up. I'll just go to that. Might just take me just 1 second here just to put that link up. You can just bear with me a minute.
Sure.
Yeah, I'll do that. Yeah.
Is it possible, these large areas of glass, is it possible, as another alternative explanation, that possibly people had nuclear bombs, nuclear devices, and there was the reference I've just given, when it talks about that, it talks about large areas of glass that look like they've been exactly the same as the results of terrestrial nuclear tests that have been done already. In fact, Australia was a main testing ground before the Second World War for that type of stuff. So we have large areas of that ourselves out in the desert. And so there are large areas. You can drive your vehicle apparently over some of these areas, and the glass breaks under the tires of the of the vehicle. But the one I was interested in, of course, was that circular one, because you don't get a perfect circle. It's a circle of about a metre or so wide, but perfect in circumference and everything. And the diameter of the circle is how big?
Yeah, I can't remember. I have to look it up, and I don't know off the top of my head, but it was quite large.
So maybe at least a couple 100 feet in diameter.
Oh, much more than that.
Okay.
Yeah, much more than that.
Yeah, there's obviously some type of advanced technology. There's actually history stories in India, and in India they all believe it's true. And I've been around the world a little bit, so I've met with a lot of these people and talked with them. And they believe that this is true, that there were 3 floating cities back in those days. And when I say those days, it seems to be some disagreement about how long ago this was, but they still have written books that are talking about it as if it's happening now. In other words, books don't last forever, you know what I mean, even stone books. But they still have written books that say there were 3 floating cities. So I'm guessing this was 1,000 years or 2,000 years or 3,000 years or 4,000 years ago, somewhere in that range. And these 3 cities got involved in a nuclear war and destroyed each other and did a lot of damage to the people living down below also on the surface of the earth. And that's a story that's very possibly true. I wasn't there, so I can't say for sure, but it sure looks like there's a lot of evidence for that.
There is a lot of evidence for that. So that last reference I've given there, if people want to download that, they'll find that that there's just scores of evidence of that type to suggest exactly what you're saying. So I'm glad you brought that up. And I just think it's important for people to realise that the education system we have today is not really about education. Like I was in the education system for a while, I became increasingly uncomfortable because of that problem, where a particular very narrow, very blinkered, very contrived worldview is being, people are making deliberate effort to mainstream a very inaccurate, incorrect view of our history and what's gone on in the past. It's not a very comfortable thing to consider, but nevertheless, I've been in it and I'm out of it, and looking back, I can just confirm from my point of view that's the truth of the matter. Yes,
I've been in it too. I taught for 2 years way back when. This is 30 years ago almost now. But I can agree with you 100%. You're required to teach certain things, whether you believe they're true or not. And really, it's once you realize that, then it's hard to keep going, because it's against your conscience to go to be involved in a brainwashing or an indoctrination program. You really Absolutely. Would like to teach the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, as far as you know. We obviously some things are theories, and you teach theories and so on. But as far as you know, it's good to tell the truth. And when you know something's wrong, it really bugs me, and I can see it bugs you too, to have to teach it when you know it's wrong.
Well, it is. Yeah, it is. I mean, one simple thing, a simple example, I suppose, from, in Australian history, for instance, they say that Australia was discovered by Captain Cook, and when he landed on the beach, he planted the Union Jack. The Union Jack was a British flag. The only problem was the Union Jack wasn't even designed when Captain Cook supposedly came to Australia. It was 40 years later before that flag was even designed, but all of the history books have him planting the Union Jack on the beach of Australia. Well, the thing is, in fact, it was the red, I think, Queen Anne of Scotland flag, and that's a Masonic symbol.
Yeah, that's
the sort of distortion and misrepresentation and outright sort of fraud that goes on, and people just aren't aware of it. It becomes part of the woodwork, and people aren't aware of it. But the amount of fraud that exists in the education system, unfortunately, is huge. And I don't like to, upset people by carrying on about that. But unfortunately, I think if anyone wants to look into it, I don't think you can come to any other conclusion.
Yeah, I'm with you there. One other thing that was taught even in this country is that this was taught in the 1800s. Is when 1800s up until about 1940 or so, they taught that when they discovered Australia, it was uninhabited. And the reason then when they later admitted that there were natives living there, they were basically saying, well, they didn't look like us, so they don't count. But really,
I know.
Obviously, those natives were there way before Captain Cook ever went there.
Absolutely, and the history of the Australian Aboriginals is very, very parallel to the history of the American Indians in terms of the incredible, abuse, the incredible dispossession. It doesn't make for pretty study at all, and it's a very sad business. But what I might do, if you don't mind, Timothy, is just move on to some of the archaeological stuff and some of those images that we've got, because I want people to have confidence that the Bible record about the giants is in fact reliable. That website the link I put up where it's got returnofthenephilim.com, for instance, if people want to just have a quick look at that, there's a whole stack of stuff there from your country, from America, a huge list of all of the different discoveries that have been made that people have never ever heard of, never been mentioned at school, but nevertheless are verifiable and witnessed, and a whole lot of stuff there. There's some interesting ones. Australia seems to be a much older sort of country geologically. I'll just read one I thought was interesting. So an artefact that was found in my country, Australia. If we go down there, it says that there was, where are we? Sorry, I'm just looking at it here.
Yeah, let me interject, Richard. We try to keep the show down to an hour, and so we want to do questions and answers. We want to do questions and answers. So go ahead and finish up your thought there, and then we'll move on.
Yeah, okay. Oh, well, people can look at that themselves, but I mean, there was one fossilised molar. It was a human molar that was found in Australia here, but the size of it was such that the owner would have had to have been around about 27 feet tall, which is unbelievable. If you go to the Tim, our brother Martin, if you've got those images there, people, if you can perhaps put up we'll just go in order if you like, because the first one there, the first two are just some hieroglyphs from history, and it just sort of simply demonstrates that the idea of the giants is not something that we've invented of modern times, because there's some very good prints there of hieroglyphs where the leaders, if you like, or the king, is enormous compared to the other people, the ordinary people, if you like. And that's only a couple of examples of, like many that exist in the archaeological records. So people, if you're happy, Brother Martin, just to sort of help people by scrolling through those, just 1 and 2. They're just a couple I came across.
Yeah, I think your pictures are excellent. I looked at them, and so, we'll just ask Brother Martin to put them all up, one after another, put them all up. And I think since we're at 10:53 right now, we'll go on to some questions. And if anybody else has questions, feel free to send them in. And we'll have to have you. Your subject is fascinating, Richard. We'll have to have you on again as a guest and have you speak more about this, because you got 20 minutes or so. It just doesn't do justice for the subject.
It's such interesting stuff, and it's not just interesting though. Like, perhaps if we do speak on this again, we can go into more about what the implications are for the times we're living in now, because I think there are some very, very significant implications for the times that we're living in now. And like I said at the beginning, it's disappointing that this subject, because it's a little bit, I suppose, in the mainstream view, a bit odd that the mainstream churches don't seem to deal with it. But I really think it would be a benefit for people to actually do deal with it, and just have a bit of a think about what it might mean for current times. Yeah,
let's save that for next time, and unless somebody asks a question. We've got 2 questions here. Let's see. The first one's from Brother Linford in Euphrates, Pennsylvania, and he says, could Timothy Thrapp share a little more about Nikola Tesla being part of Witt's group? Yeah, you're welcome to ask any questions you want. They could be related to what we've been talking about giants, or they could be related to any subject. And this is about Nikola Tesla being part of the Witt's group. And back then, it was just called the ministry. And his full question is, as the books I've read portrayed Tesla as very brilliant, but also partly atheist. Yes, they love to portray people that are very brilliant as atheists, but it's part of the propaganda and foolishness, I can tell you without a doubt. I didn't meet Tesla myself. I was, I'm quite a bit younger than, I was born way after he died. But the guys that I worked with early on in the ministry, 4 of them had worked with Tesla himself. And every one of them said he was a godly man. He was a minister, a scientist, engineer. I say minister, teacher, and which is what I am also. There's 5-fold ministry. You could be called to be a prophet or pastor or evangelist or a teacher or a apostle, and those are the 5. And Tesla was called as a teacher, and I'm called as a teacher. And teachers often do not get in the church. They often do not get the recognition. A lot of people do not realize there are 5-fold. They think it's just the pastor or the priest, and that's it. The priest isn't even in there, by the way. It's so a lot of these denominations have things a little bit backwards. But anyway, let's see the next question. We'll go on to. Hopefully that answers. Basically, Tesla was brilliant, but he was not an atheist. Neither was Einstein. They often portray Einstein as atheist, but you can look at many quotes from him, like he was saying in one case, God does not play dice with the universe. I mean, obviously that means he believes in God. It's not a joke. It's a statement that Einstein made. Okay, next comment is, I don't understand that one. It says Nephilim, I thought. So maybe he's trying to understand more about that. One came in early on before you talked much, Richard. Whoever sent that comment, I'll have to send it again. A little more clear question. 7 or maybe more. Okay, it looks like, the next question is, for me again, it says, has anything in your experience with extraterrestrials suggested that the Greys are involved in breeding programs with humans? In my personal experience, no, but I've heard this and read it in many cases, so I am inclined to believe that there are genetic testing and possibly hybridization attempts going on with the Greys. And that's Brother Martin, Greg Martin, that asked that question. I do believe there are possible hybridization attempts going on, and yet our government is doing the same kind of stuff. As Brother Richard mentioned, that even back in Nimrod's time, they were trying to crossbreed humans with animals, so different species. And so the extraterrestrials is basically just different species. So there's a lot of people that are working on that kind of stuff. How successful they are, I don't know. I can't answer that. It's beyond my knowledge. The next question we got is from Jeff from Grand Rapids. And he says, this one's looks like it's addressed to you or both of us, Brother Richard. It says, do you guys think that there is a more metaphorical or literal connection to the giants we are fighting these days? Is it mostly the world powers and the corporations who are giants? You want to answer that, Brother Richard?
Yes, certainly. I think that just if I can just comment in general, that just by the nature of the question, there is a very, very powerful tradition in Christian circles about sort of as a matter of default, treating everything in Scripture as somehow metaphorical or allegorical, and I can understand that. It's something that I think has come in because a lot of parts of Scripture are not that easy to understand, and so over history I think there's that habit has come in of treating everything as sort of allegorical, metaphorical, sometimes spiritualizing everything. I don't think that's justified. When Jesus says that Scripture cannot be broken, I think that the plain sense meaning of Scripture is very important to take in the first instance. I mean, if there are indications in context that we need to treat something as a metaphor or an allegory, well, I'm completely happy with that. But in general, I think the plain sense meaning of Scripture is the most important one that we need to look at in the first instance. And so, it's certainly true to say that there are giants, metaphorical giants, in terms of the corporations and governments and world powers. I'd agree with that. But in the context that we're talking about now, thing that I would have gone on to had we time was to look at the parable of the wheat and the tares, and how that relates to this whole business of Satan's tremendous interest, it seems, in reproductive technology and interbreeding with the human race, interbreeding his kind with the human race. And so while I would agree that yes, there are metaphorical giants in terms of those things that are mentioned by the in that question, I think that one revelation that would be useful for more people to have is that Satan's kingdom is not these ethereal spirits who sort of float through the ether and whisper negative comments into your ear. I think that Satan's kingdom is highly and heavily involved in high technology on the ground on this planet, and that we're not looking at some ethereal, metaphorical kingdom at work. We're looking at a real kingdom with real organisation that has high technology at its disposal, and I think that this whole idea that Satan's kingdom is somehow metaphorical or spiritual, living in some other dimension, I think is very limited and quite incorrect in my view.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you, Richard. On the other hand, I do know there are spiritual forces, or you could say spirits, that are involved, and we do have authority over these spirits. We have authority over every unclean spirit. And these unclean spirits do lead and mislead the world rulers and the scriptures. There's many scriptures to bear this out. They lead and mislead these people that are self-centered and these people that are behind most of the stuff that goes on. So I would say, in that sense, we do wrestle against the giants. They are giants in that sense. But yeah, I agree with you that you got to be careful not to spiritualize everything and therefore lose all the meaning behind it. Because there were physical giants, and there very well could be physical giants here again on this planet. We don't know for sure what all's going on in the top secret labs and so on. And but on the other hand, we have authority over all the power of the enemy. It doesn't matter if they're physical or if they're spirits. We have authority over every unclean spirit, and all we have to do is learn to exercise faith, and we can conquer. We can come out victorious in every situation.
I think that's just so important, Sir Timothy, because with people who study, for instance, what governments are doing in some of these black projects, developing their super soldiers and so on, anyone without knowledge of God is immediately going to be subject to fear and despair because of what it looks like on paper. But if one takes the spiritual view and understands David and Goliath, then that reverses the whole thing. So I'm really encouraged by what you say, and I'm hoping everyone's listened really carefully to all of that.
Amen, brother. Amen. So the message is for everyone listening is don't compare your problems with yourself. Compare your problems with God. And God is bigger than any problem. He is more powerful. The biggest problem you could possibly imagine is nothing compared to the power of God.
Yeah.
He can solve it in an instant, in a heartbeat. And so just always have faith and trust God, and we'll always come out victorious. Another thing that's important is people to learn not to worry or fret, because when you start worrying and fretting, that's the opposite of trusting God. And you're putting yourself into the enemy's camp or the enemy's dominion if you start worrying and fretting. You're putting yourself under the enemy's authority. So just exercise faith. If you're tempted to worry or fret, just study the Bible more, the positive things of the Bible, the positive messages. And there's many other good books. Last week I mentioned Norman Vincent Peale in his book. There's many good books that have been written. Zig Ziglar, Kenneth E. Hagin, not Junior but Senior. They wrote some excellent books on faith and developing your spiritual authority and learning to walk in that, so you can be successful in every endeavor of life. And if you have any, it looks like all the questions, unless a few more pop up on the screen. So, Richard, do you have anything to add before we sign off?
I would just like to apologise to some people. I think have written me comments on the text in Justin TV, and unfortunately, I can't see that page because I'm using Skype for the video component, so I haven't been able to see what people have been writing. So I apologise for not replying.
Well, Greg is forwarding all those, just so you know. I believe he's forwarded all the questions. So yeah, so you should be okay, and he can forward comments too. So I think we've got all the questions.
Yeah, that's great. All right. Well, thank you for inviting me. I really appreciate it, and it's been lovely to be here and meet everyone else on the web conference, and look forward to doing it again.
Yeah, thank you, brother, for coming on. We're pleased to have you, and we're looking forward to having you next time. And you guys keep up the good work. Be careful there. Careful driving, and yeah, God bless you and everything you're doing.
No worries. Let Ann say goodbye.
Okay.
Okay, goodbye. God bless.
Okay, God bless you too, Ann. Thanks for coming on. Did you have anything to add?
Oh no, I think Rich is pretty good. He knows his stuff probably better than I do.
Yeah, we could have talked for an hour, I think, just about giants. That was great. We really appreciate the presentation. We'll talk again next time.
Yeah, we will. God bless.
Absolutely.
God bless you guys. Bye.
Hey, everyone. Bye-bye.